Good evening and welcome everyone to the first ever virtual webinar prevention event. This evening we're going to be discussing some very vital issues for Klal Israel. We have an international lineup for you that we're very proud to bring you from our offices in Jerusalem, throughout Israel, and from New York as well. I now have the great kavod of our Aguna and Get Prevention program here at the International Young Israel Movement in Jerusalem, Dr. Rachel Levin.
Thank you. Thank you. This was the director of the International Young Israel Movement, Mush Meyer, and as he said, my name is Rachel. I'm going to speak to you about get refusal and its solution. Get refusal is a societal problem from within a Jewish society for anyone that gets married in an Orthodox marriage. In Israel, that includes all marriages administered by the state through the religious councils. And in the United States, it's all Orthodox marriages, including those of Chabad, where the people themselves may not be Orthodox, but they're getting married in an Orthodox marriage. The problem of get refusal is unexpected. You never know when it's going to pop up. And the solution to it, it's such a widespread problem that the solution lies in the hands of marrying couples. It's very much like the polio vaccine. Polio is a disease for which we do not have a cure. But since everyone is vaccinated, polio never shows up. We don't catch it. And it's sort of like a herd immunity. And since everyone gets vaccinated, we've eliminated the problem as opposed to solving the problem when it occurs. The same thing can be said for the problem of get refusal, the inability for a woman primarily to get a Jewish divorce from her husband who's refusing to give her a divorce, or in Israel and sometimes in the diaspora, a man can be a victim of get refusal as well. So it really is an egalitarian problem. But what we have is, the solution is a preventative solution. We have a halachic prenup. In the United States, the halachic prenup that solves the problem in a preventative manner in accordance with Jewish law is the prenuptial agreement of the Beth Din of America. This prenuptial agreement has the backing of the Rabbinical Council of America, of the OU, of Yeshiva University, and the director of ORA, the Organization for the Resolution of Agunot, who will be speaking after me, Keshet Star. She'll be explaining about the halachic prenup of the Beth Din of America. I'm going to talk to you a bit about the Heskem Lekavod Hadadi. In English, the Agreement for Mutual Respect. This is the Israeli prenuptial agreement, though it does tie in with the American agreement, which I'll get to later. Both agreements are built on a monetary obligation for spousal support in the case where one is refusing to give a get. And what has happened is that this monetary obligation for spousal support has in essence never been implemented. Because it's such an effective agreement, it's drawn up so well, it simply by being there, it prevents get refusal. We have had the experience in Israel of cases where husbands have initially refused to give their get to their wives, and someone of authority that they respected was sent to explain to them, to remind them that they signed on the Agreement for Mutual Respect, and what the implications were. Within a few weeks, they gave the get. Within a few weeks. And it's been that effective. Mush, can you mute your mic, please? Because I hear you when while I'm speaking. Okay. Okay, now, the solution of the Heskem Lekavod Hadadi appears on the iyim.org.il site, and it appears actually in 5 languages, in Hebrew, English, French, Spanish, and Russian. It has been signed now for 2 decades, and it has been proven to be very effective, 100% effective. As I said, a get was given within 3 weeks in all of the cases when the man that was refusing to give a get was reminded of what he signed. Now, the Eskem L'Kavod Hadadi is, as I said, egalitarian. It's completely mutual, as its name indicates, the agreement for mutual respect, and it provides a basis, a foundation for a very good marriage, because each one realizes that he cannot prevent the other from asking for a divorce if it becomes absolutely necessary. The agreement for mutual respect was authored by 2 rabbis and a To'enet Rabbanit, a rabbinical court advocate. The 2 rabbis were Harav Eliashiv Knoll, Zichrono Levracha, the rabbi of Kibbutz Kfar Etzion, Harav Dr. David Ben Zazon, who was then the Rav of Kibbutz Ein Tzurim, and myself as a To'enet Rabbanit, with consultation with many, many experts. It took a long time to develop. Every word was gone over, not only by ourselves as halachic authorities, but by other halachic authorities, including a dayan, a rabbinical court judge from the High Rabbinical Court in Jerusalem. And it is so effective, as I said, it has proven itself many times. The monetary mechanism states that after 180 days, if after a notification that you want to implement the agreement, if the couple is still married, then the one who is refusing to give the get after 180 days, the spousal obligation kicks in. So they've got 6 months to work it out. But as I said, experience has proven that it's been worked out immediately, and a get was given within 3 weeks. It works because it brings the couple to communicate. Instead of fighting with themselves in an adversarial situation, adding more trauma to a divorce than is necessary, they have a quiet and dignified divorce. And above all, the children are protected from being used as tools to hurt one another. We have an international clause included in the agreement for mutual respect, which transfers the agreement if the couple is abroad from Israel, outside of the state of Israel. It changes the agreement into the agreement of the Beth Din of America. So couples that are considering Aliyah should consult to find out, excuse me, whether they should be signing the Beth Din of America's agreement or the agreement for mutual respect. Excuse me. In short, we highly recommend that every couple should sign. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Ledmore, very much for that. At this stage, I would like to welcome our many, many viewers on our Zoom broadcast and our Facebook live stream as well. Please feel free to send us any questions you may have for any of the speakers, and at the end of the session, we will try and answer as many as we can. Now I have the greatest pleasure and the greatest honor to introduce Dr. Keshet Star, Advocate, the Executive Director of Aura, speaking to us from New York.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here, and thank you so much to Rachel and to Rabbi Meyer, to everyone involved for making this wonderful program happen. What I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about the RCA, the Rabbinical Council of America Prenup, that we advocate for at Aura. And just to get us started, what I wanted to do is tell you a little bit more about what the problem looks like in the United States, so that you can have a sense of how the prenup really comes to address some of the challenges that we deal with specifically in the United States. And so basically the challenge, Israel has many of its own challenges in dealing with these cases. The challenge that we find in the US is that we're working in a system of legal pluralism, which is just a fancy way of saying that there are many systems that people are navigating simultaneously, which is not simple to do. So we have people trying to get through the civil process and the halachic process, don't know what to do first. The systems interact in ways that are complicated, and that can create a lot of challenges. In addition, in the United States, a Beit Din or a religious court typically doesn't have a lot of enforcement power. So if they issue a ruling, it's not like when a court issues a ruling and can then much more easily go ahead and enforce that ruling. And so those are just a little snippet of the challenges that we deal with at ORA that make this work so challenging. And essentially what the halachic prenup does is it really specifically addresses the challenges of navigating these cases in the United States in a really creative way. And so basically there are two main components to this document. The first is that it's an arbitration agreement to the Beit Din of America, which normally people hear arbitration agreement, not that exciting. Why is that helpful? But what we see in many of our cases is that because there are so many different Batei Din, there are so many different religious courts to choose from in the United States, just figuring out which court we're going to go to can be a major source of disagreement between a couple, and that alone can delay a couple for years in the process. So the fact that this prenup binds you to a Beit Din is itself means that in the event it needs to be used, you're ahead of the game. And not only that, but the Beit Din of America is a responsible Beit Din that has published rules and procedures, that has attorneys on staff. So you're committing to a Beit Din that can handle your case well and responsibly. And the second piece of the prenup is that it enforces a halachic support requirement. So the idea is that in halacha, husbands and wives have obligations to each other. And just as Rachel said, get refusal can happen to either gender. It can happen to men, it can happen to women. So many couples choose to sign a reciprocal version of the prenup, which goes both ways. And essentially the idea is that you can't kind of have your halachic cake and eat it too. That if you want to live separately but stay halachically married, i.e. not give the get, great, but you also have to fulfill the responsibilities that come with halachic marriage. And what it essentially means is that for every day you delay the get, you owe your spouse $150, which works out to roughly around $54,000 a year, depending on how many days there are in the year, but you get the idea. And essentially what this does is it creates a financial disincentive to delaying the get. So if someone's thinking, I don't know if I want to do this, or maybe I'll do this later on, the fact that money is piling up every day changes the motivations. And so essentially the reasons why this works so well are several-fold. First of all, as I said earlier, bringing the halachic and civil legal systems together is really complicated. And this prenup is a creative way of making sure that we're working within the Beit Din system. So we have the halachic rubber stamp, the Jewish legal support that we need. But at the same time, this is an arbitration agreement that's enforceable in court like any other arbitration commitment. And so you get the enforcement power of the civil court without sacrificing the halachic, the Jewish legal integrity of the document. The other great thing about the prenup is that it encourages a get early on. And this is something Rachel mentioned also. There, is a period just to figure out what's going on. And is this couple definitely, this relationship definitely over? But at that point, the prenup really pushes the get to the beginning of the process. And what's great about that is that what we see at ORA is that the longer a get refusal case goes on, the longer it's going to go on. That over time, people get stuck, they get entrenched in their positions, they get angrier, and having the get resolved at the beginning helps ensure that no one's going to become an aguna, that the get is not being used as leverage, oh, you want the get, you're going to give me the house, that kind of conversation. It really prevents that from happening. And it gets people earlier on where everyone's a little bit more flexible. And we've really been able to see at ORA cases where a couple gets divorced and uses the prenup. We pay especially close attention when a couple with a history of domestic abuse get divorced with the prenup, because those are the cases where we would be really concerned as to whether or not get refusal is going to be a problem. And we've really seen that the prenup does its job, and that when a couple is getting divorced, even with a history of abuse, even when people are coming in with sort of bad blood, the prenup is effective. It encourages a get early on and without any extortion. And so one service that we offer is that couples come to our office and sign a halachic prenup. We have sort of a one-stop prenup shop in our office in New York City that people are welcome to join. And we are also happy to help people figure out how to get it signed and notarized if they can't make it into our office. And part of what we offer is really guiding couples through the ins and outs of signing the prenup. So we work with couples where one person really wants to sign the prenup and the other person really doesn't, and help them navigate that. We also work with many couples who aren't sure which document to sign. And this is really where the international crossover component is so critical. There are young couples who get married who might want to make aliyah, not sure if they actually will or if they will not, or couples getting married in Israel that may stay in Israel, that may come back to the United States. Couples are young very often, and these bigger questions are still undetermined. And so one thing that we advise people to consider when signing a prenup, whether in the US or in Israel, is how would this prenup translate to another jurisdiction? So if I end up needing to use this prenup in Israel, or if I sign an Israeli prenup, I need to use it in the United States, is that going to cross over? And so the International Young Israel Movement's prenup, the Haskem Lekavod Hadadi, has a clause that essentially transfers the document into the Beth Din of America prenup. And so it has that international crossover capability, which is a great asset, especially for couples who aren't sure where they're going to end up. And the final piece that I'll mention as well is that a lot of the times when people are first introduced to the concept of a prenup, it can feel very intimidating and almost a little icky. It's sort of a, well, I don't know, we're young in love, we want our marriage to work, we're committed. Why should we talk about this really unpleasant, uncomfortable thing when we're already arguing over who's going to sit at what table and how many guests the in-laws are allowed to bring and all of those things? And we hear that being engaged couples, and how difficult a period in life it can be in some ways. But what we really emphasize at ORA, and I should have mentioned earlier, but essentially what we do at ORA is a mix of advocacy. We have a helpline and also education programming, is that we really emphasize that the prenup is not something you sign for yourself. It's something you sign for the people around you. If you're signing a prenup because your fiance is kind of a jerk and you're pretty sure you're going to need it, then you probably want a new fiance and not a prenup. That's not really what this is for. And in fact, we really urge couples who are strong and secure and happy to make the step of signing a prenup, telling your friends about it, the ones that are going to spread the word to the people around you. Ultimately, as Rachel said, the prenup is only effective doing it, and who need it have it. And so fundamentally, again, it's not personal. It shouldn't feel personal. But the best reason to sign a prenup is that we believe that Kol Yisrael Arevim Zel Lezeh, that we're all responsible for one another as Jewish people. And this is something that you can do that's actually really quick and easy, that makes a huge difference for the Jewish community as a whole, and can really be a life-changing difference for the people who are going to need it. So we really strongly urge you to consider a prenup when the day comes when you are in that state, and we also welcome anyone to reach out if you're dealing with specific questions or you have any concerns, both on this chat and in general. I know I can speak for all of us. We are very passionate about this, and we really want to be a resource for you as you make this important decision. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Keshet, the Executive Director of ORA. At this moment, I'd just like to give a shout out to Keshet Starr and Dr. Rachel Levmore, two very, very super people who work day and night to solve couples that are in anguish, couples that are in pain. But even more than that, prevention is better than cure. And these two people that you've seen this evening, Dr. Levmore and Keshet Starr, really work day and night and day, to prevent pain in Klal Israel. And what they aim to do is to get young couples, like Keshav said, when they're in love, when they're height of love in the engagement period, to sign a prenuptial agreement. And we're very fortunate this evening to have Elisheva Rotzler and Batzalel Kohn, who we wish a great mazel tov to, speaking to us from Alon Shvut in Israel about why they signed the prenuptial agreement. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Batzalel. I'm originally from New York.
I'm Elisheva, originally from London.
And we got married just about 3 months ago. And it was very important for us to sign the halachic prenup when we were engaged and when we were about to get married.
We chose, we found the Heskem Lechavod Hadadi on EM's website, printed it out and signed it at our local marriage registrar. We felt it was very important to sign it, and as important as signing it, posting it on Facebook to spread the word and encourage everybody else to sign it too. As Dr. Lev Moore and Kesh had said, herd immunity, and get as many people as possible to sign it.
Sometimes, especially when you're engaged, and as Kesha just said, you know, you're height of your love, and it's really a wonderful, wonderful period of life. The last thing you want to start thinking about is what if, and like signing a document that says, you know, who's going to pay who what, and it could be some pretty unpleasant business. But because, you know, we had heard from all sorts of different people about how important it was, and because we had begun ourselves to identify how important it was important for us to, you know, to do it, and also to make a big thing about it because of how important it is, even with all the unpleasantries. And to that end, we decided that we really wanted to make the experience of signing a prenup a lot of fun and exciting. So after we signed, we had with the marriage registrar a big party. I'll show you a picture from it. Yeah, 1 second. There it is. So when we were done, we took out a cake, we put in some, you know, little fireworks, and we all had a little party together. And for us, it was really important just to, instead of this being something that you sort of like hide under the rug, or something that you do, you know, in the back of your hand, we wanted to make it something that we'd put out there, and we'd say to everyone that, you know, we're really excited to be doing this, we're really happy to doing this, and that it was something that we weren't necessarily like afraid of, and dafka, to the contrary, something that we were very excited to do.
Kind of similar to at a wedding when you read out the ksuba. It's not exactly the nicest of documents, also talks about things to do with divorce. But people get all these decorative ones and hang them up on their walls and display prominently in their houses. So we're not suggesting that you get a decorative copy of the Heskem Lechavod Hadadi, but you could. But to make it something that doesn't have that stigma, that doesn't feel like a bad thing, and just something important, that something very important that you have to do before you get married, and make it fun and make it pleasant to sign.
So while the process necessarily isn't always like super duper pleasant, there are, you know, those awkward parts. Overall, we felt that by, you know, making it fun and just by looking at it with a positive attitude and realizing that it was part of a really, really important initiative, we found that it was very empowering, a nice experience, and definitely, you know, made us feel better on our wedding day. And, you know, I'd encourage anybody else who's considering it to go ahead, to sign, to make it an, you know, exciting experience, to tell all your friends about it, and also just to realize and give yourself a pat on the back for doing something that's so, 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 so important. That's all.
Thank you very much, Elisheva and Batzalel, for sharing those intimate moments with us. Having a look at both of you and the happiness and joy you have, we have no doubt that Bezrat Hashem, you'll never need to use the prenup. And you're exactly the type of couples that sign it, show bravery, and show Klal Israel today what's really needed, prevention before cure. We've been discussing the halakhic prenuptial agreement this evening, and we're now very, very honored to have Rabbi Judah Korbel of the Queens Jewish Center from New York to join us to share a few thoughts. Rabbi Korbel.
Okay. Thank you very much to everybody who organized. Thank you to International Young Israel Movement for initiating this webinar. I think it's very important that we constantly discuss this issue. Before I get into, there have been exciting things I'll also share on the more personal end. I did personally sign a prenuptial agreement along with my wife. We actually wrote in our wedding program that we did so also because we wanted to emphasize the importance of making this a normal trend across the United States. And for the most part, I think all my friends, almost everybody I know who's gotten married in the past 5 years has, but we still want to make sure that this becomes really the new norm. I'll even share, I don't have a fancy screen share like Vital and Elisheva did, but I'll share when we went to the ORA office to sign our prenup, we made a little sign that we took a picture with. So I don't know how I can see it, but it says, I signed the halachic prenup because we follow our Rebbe's Das Torah. So we meant that a little bit facetiously because I'm not such a proponent of Das Torah, and neither is my Rebbe. But I think it's actually, I wanted to mention that because I think it is important to share that this is something that really has taken on as becoming really the norm in the modern Orthodox rabbinate in the United States, that it's something that's not just a possibility, but something that is very strongly urged. So to that end, if you go, you can find this on Ora's website actually, there's a document that shows the signature of the vast majority of Rosh Yeshiva at Yeshiva University who have endorsed and urged the halachic prenup. So it has widespread endorsement from those rabbis alone. And this is also something that's, as I think Dr. Leffmore said, this is something that's strongly endorsed by the Rabbinical Council of America. They've had a couple of resolutions to that end over the past few years, but the most recent resolution says, I'll read the end. Therefore, the Rabbinical Council of America declares that each of its members must utilize in any wedding at which he is the officiant, in addition to a ketubah, a rabbinically sanctioned prenuptial agreement, where available, that aids in our community's efforts to ensure the timely and unconditional issuance of a get. So some of the past resolutions have suggested that it's something that's important, but now at this point, the RCA is basically saying you must, that's something that's incumbent upon every Masader Kiddushin to do. I'll share that I officiated at a wedding in August, and one of the witnesses on the marriage license said to me, "So would you ever officiate at a wedding without a halachic prenup?" And my answer to that was no. You can also go on the RCA website where you can find dozens and dozens of RCA rabbis who endorse a prenup. Some of them are scholars, but a lot of them are the pulpit rabbis who are serving as Masader Kiddushin on a regular basis. So this really has widespread support throughout the Orthodox rabbinate in the United States. The driver of the halachic prenup originally was Rabbi Mordechai Willig, who's Rosh Yeshiva at YU, and I believe the Sgan of Beit Din of the Rabbinical Council of America. So the way he began working on this was he saw an article written by Rabbi Zalman Nechemia Goldberg, who's the son-in-law of Rosh Hashanah Zalman Auerbach Zatzal. And Rabbi Goldberg had written a theoretical article suggesting a possibility for this sort of halachic prenuptial agreement, but it hadn't been put into any sort of practical use. It was just a theoretical discussion. So Rabbi Willig took that and he drafted something, shared with Rabbi Goldberg. Rabbi Goldberg urged him to go to Rabbi Chaim Zimbalist, who's a Dayan in Tel Aviv, to get his endorsement, and they made some adjustments and eventually got the Haskamot, the approbations of Rabbi Avadia Yosef Zatzal and Rabbi Gedalia Dov Schwartz, who's the Av Beit Din of the Rabbinical Council of America, and also at the CRC. So Rabbi Willig is one of the foremost halachic authorities in the United States. He's been 110% behind this, not only in supporting it, but in actually making this happen. Wouldn't have happened without him. The precedent, Rabbi Willig says, for doing this prenuptial agreement, this wasn't just something that was dreamt up, but But the Nachas Shiva, who was a student of the Taz, one of the Achronim, wrote that that there was a possibility that if a man agrees that if he does something and he can no longer be married, so he would have to go to Beit Din and pay 10 zehuvim, monetary amount every day, and or not every day, but every month until they're able to put things back together. So that's where you see, as Kesha mentioned, the current halachic prenuptial agreement has one paying $150, in this case a day, and we'll get into where that number comes from. But this is a very similar idea. So Rabbi Willick says, this isn't something that was totally made up in the last couple of decades, but something that does have a halachic precedent. The theory behind all of this is that we read in the parsha yesterday, in Parsha Mishpatim, that a man is required to provide she'erak suta be'onata, required to sustain her, to clothe her, so a man's required to do that every day. And the Shulchan Aruch says that if she leaves and it's not her fault, then he still has to continue to support her, even if they're not living together. So in theory, someone might say, well, doesn't the ketubah already have this provision in that the man has to continue to support the woman even if they're not living together? But the point of the halachic prenup is that it closes the loophole that it's not just about whose fault it is, but no matter what, if the husband and wife are no longer living together, whether it's a wife who leaves or the husband who leaves, whoever's refusing to give the get, so they become responsible for giving this $150 a day. So why $150 a day? Because that's the number that's used, that's assumed that in order to live, you need that amount to live per day with room and board and the like. So in the prenup, it says if they cannot live together in one dwelling for whatever reason, I accept to support her or him with $150, even if they have their own incomes. That's also another important thing. It doesn't matter whether the person technically needs it, but that number remains binding. And Rabbi Willick points out that you might say $150 might not be a lot, for billionaires, if the billionaire is refusing to give a get. So maybe $150 is not an incentive, but he points out that even if the person's a billionaire, if he truly hates or she truly hates the other person, they won't want to give a dime. So this has been an effective deterrent. $50-something thousand a year, as Keshet said, is a lot to give to somebody that you no longer love. So that's what sort of drives this, is that simply you're required to provide for the other person as long as you are halachically married. And if you choose not to live together, then you have to do it in this fashion. One of the haskamot for the halachic prenuptial agreement comes from Rav Asher Weiss as well, who's a world-class star of a posek, and he addresses the potential issue: is this considered an asmachta? There are two issues that can make forcing one to give a get an issue. Number one is that the person has to agree. The man has to agree to give the get. It can't be forced. It can't be melusa, but it has to be something that he's willing to do. We also have a potential issue of asmachta that for example, if you're signing the prenup, if you don't really think that this is something you're going to do, so maybe maybe you didn't really think it was going to happen, and that's why you signed the piece of paper, not because you're actually taking it as binding. But the reason why this prenup works halachically is because it's not a fine for not divorcing, and it's not meant to. It's not done in a fashion that's meant to force the person to divorce, but it's simply saying again that you have to provide this livelihood. That's a baseline halachic obligation. So at that point, the person can choose not to give the get. They can choose to pay the $150, but if they don't want to do that baseline halachic requirement, then the best course of action would be to give the get. So that's sort of how we avoid some of those issues, and it becomes a little, even though it's designed to be a deterrent, but it's also based under the assumption that this is required halakhically regardless. The last thing I just wanted to mention, some people will sometimes say, why haven't the rabbis sat down and come up with a loophole to solve the Aguna problem. We have Mechirat Chametz, and we have an Eruv, and we have a Prose Bowl. All those are legal loopholes to get around things that we don't want to deal with. So the answer to the Aguna problem in the sense is really the halachic prenup. That preventative care is always the best course of action. When it comes to Mechirat Chametz, if you don't do it before Pesach, then it's not going to work. If you don't create the area before Shabbos, it's not going to work. So too with a prenuptial agreement or even a postnuptial agreement, where you never, in this case, you actually never even stuck. There's always the possibility of doing the postnup, and there's always hope in a good situation, God forbid. But the mechanism that is going to be most effective in preventing agunot in the long term is going to be this halachic prenuptial agreement because of its widespread support, and because, as has been discussed earlier, it's been extremely effective in making sure that the get has been given in timely fashion, not in an acrimonious way. And our tefillah should be that nobody should ever need it, but everybody should sign it.
Thank you, Rabbi Korbel, for those wise words. We greatly appreciate them. At this moment, I'd like to encourage all our viewers to become ambassadors for the halakhic prenup. And in your home, in your community, in your shul, try and arrange a party. Try arrange an event, a prenuptial signing event, a postnuptial signing event. Please help us get the awareness out to the people that we need. A virtual event of this magnitude cannot just be done by the speakers, but there's also a backroom staff that I owe a great thank you to, and that is Elisheva Mullah and Rachel Henderson here in the International Young Israel Movement offices here in Yerushalayim. I'd now like to reintroduce Dr. Rachel Lebmore, a true trailblazer in the world of halakhic prenups.
Hello again. I'd like to summarize different things that we've learned, and especially address the problem of a romance versus prenuptial agreements. If you really think about it, signing and having your fiancé together, signing a prenuptial agreement, is the most romantic action that you can take before your marriage, because what you're saying is, I love you so much that I want to protect you from any harm that may befall you, any harm that may befall you. I even want to protect you from myself. So in doing that, it's just simply very romantic. Now, in signing a prenuptial agreement, to sum up, you're actually accomplishing a number of aims. You're putting together a number of aims that you're reaching. First of all, you're having your own individual insurance policy that you and your fiance are never going to fight so badly that you're going to get into a position of get refusal. You don't necessarily think that you're going to come to a divorce, but if you do divorce, you want to minimize the harm that comes along with the divorce. It's very similar to buying a new car, bringing it home, and what's the first thing you want to do? You want to take it out for a spin and show your friends. So you get in the car, you sit down on the driver's seat, you put the key in the ignition, and what's the first thing you do? You go like this, meaning you put on a seatbelt. Now, why are you putting on a seatbelt? If you know that once you start on your way, that you're going to end up in a traffic accident, you're not going to start the car and drive off on the road. But you know that accidents happen and not everything is in your hands. So if you want to prevent extraneous damage, more damage than what's necessary, you put on the seatbelt. The same thing is with a prenuptial agreement. Just because you're signing a prenuptial agreement does not mean that you're planning on divorce. God forbid. You don't even expect a divorce, but you're taking out personal insurance that if God forbid, you do have to enter into a divorce process, that you're going to minimize the trauma that can be caused by get refusal, and you're going to divorce with quiet and with dignity so that both of you will be able to rebuild your lives afterwards and to protect the children. The second accomplishment that you've reached by signing a prenuptial agreement is tikkun olam for Jewish society. This is a widespread problem all over the Jewish world, wherever Jews live. I have helped in situations where there was, I don't know if you're going to believe me, but this is all true, where there has been get refusal in Iran, where there has been get refusal in one of the few Jews left in Afghanistan. There's get refusal wherever there are Jews. So it happens. The signing of the prenup helps protect good people from going down a slippery slope and causing harm to their spouse. So by signing, you're doing tikkun olam, because if you sign, then your friends are going to sign, and their cousins are going to sign, and their brothers, etc. And that way we give the herd immunity, as we said. In addition, it's a once-in-a-lifetime chance to participate in halachic historical process. Sign.
Would you be kind enough, please, to now go over the questions that have been sent in and to give us some quick answers to the questions that our participants have put forward? Dr. Ledmore.
Okay, the best way to give legal validity is to sign in front of a notary. Yeah, that question was directed to me. There's a question directed to Elisheva and Ben Sion.
So we were asked how our parents and friends reacted to the prenup. Everyone was very supportive. Everyone we know thinks that it's a very good idea to sign as well, and encouraged us. The Masada Kedushin asked us if we were going to be signing one, and said that if we hadn't already been planning on it, he would have very much encouraged us to. And yeah, everyone thought it was a great idea and a very important idea too.
Dr. Ledmore, perhaps you'll be kind enough to answer the next question that was sent in by our viewers.
Which was, which question? Which question was that, Mush?
Okay. It's now my great pleasure to say a great thank you to Elisheva and Batzalel and thank them and wish them a great mazel tov in the years to come. To thank Rabbi Judah Korbel of the Queen's Jewish Center for joining us. To Keshet Star, Advocate, Executive Director of Aura, it was a pleasure partnering with you. May this be the first of many more joint operations. To Dr. Rachel Ledmore, it's always a kavod to work with you and to learn from you. I'm Daniel Mushmaya, the Executive Director of the Young Israel Movement here in Israel. We are always here, both Aura in New York and IYIM here in Jerusalem, to answer any of your questions. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.